Today we're gonna talk about video games. Just weeks ago, one of the topics of discussion is, should video games be more and more inclusive towards people who are not fans of video games? In what way should those video games be inclusive? Well, let's take a few steps back and introduce you to what I call the appeal pyramid. This pyramid represents the accessibility of certain works of entertainment. In the case of video games, the lower it is, the wider the appeal of those games, and sometimes those wide appeals result in a huge popularity of those games. But as it gets lower, it also means that the game gets simpler and blander, with less and less complicated mechanics for the players to understand, and less creative ways for the players to get into a win scenario. A casual game like Bejeweled or Tetris or Solitaire is like water, very refreshing, relaxing, fills the gap, everybody can enjoy them, but tastes like, well, water. It's functional, it does the job, everybody can consume it, but water isn't going to be your favorite drink. Games that are beyond the casual realms, that are less and less accessible, are like juices. You can drink them, but people only like certain flavors of juice, and don't really like the others. Some hardcore games are like alcohol, not only the fact that it's gonna intoxicate you, and some are even viciously addicting, but maybe you need to be at a certain age or level of maturity to even play them. And like all of these drinks, it's fine if you don't like one or the other. If one is not suitable for your taste, you can go and find another one. If you don't like apple juice and you don't like orange juice, that's fine. However, it seems like some people are in a desperate conquest that apple juices are for everybody and that they're gonna do whatever it takes to make sure that everyone drinks the apple juice. Well, apple juice isn't for everybody, and putting water into it so that everyone can drink it would only result in a horrendous apple juice. The same thing can be said to video games. Now let's talk about a game that has been booming on Steam lately, and that is Cuphead. I've beaten the game after 21 hours and 650 plus deaths, but I've managed to beat it. The brutal difficulty of Cuphead, which was a little bit overstated in my opinion, has managed to get this game the title the Dark Souls of run and gun platformers. I honestly really want to know who the hell coined the term Dark Souls of blank, because Dark Souls is not even a difficult game. It is a frustrating game, sure, but it's not that horrendously difficult. Like Cuphead, it's also a game that requires you to take your time to figure out the attack patterns and exploiting the enemy's weaknesses. If my 11-year-old cousin and 12-year-old brother can beat this game, I'm very sure you guys can too. The one thing I want to ask you is, do you think that Dark Souls is as hard as everybody make it out to be?
No, not really.
Oh, really?
Not really. Look, it's not impossible.
Certainly.
Everybody make it seems like it's very hard. It's impossible. Like you can't do anything with it. You just don't do it. No. I actually started out playing Dark Souls like it's a random thought. I checked on Deada's PSG. Hey, Dark Souls. This I heard from PewDiePie. This game is pretty good, and I tried it, and like I suffered for a few moments, and now I can consider myself as a good player.
Yeah,
not really an expert player, a good player because I already beat it twice. It's you know that thing where they say easy to do but hard to master?
Yes.
Yeah, kind of like that. It's not really that easy to do, but not that hard to do. But if you want to master it though, then you should get good.
So Dark Souls isn't as hard as everybody make it out to be. And the reason why I'm asking you here is because it's the adults that say that. It's the adults that keep saying, oh, Dark Souls, it's like a very hard game. And it's the game journalists, you know, like working in the game industry. It's like, oh, it's a very, very hard, very difficult game. And everything like that.
I beat it when I'm 12, dude. Like,
now you're 13, right?
Now?
Yeah.
Now, I am 13 now, but I beat it when I'm 12. Heck, Daddy beat it when he's 11.
Yeah. So that's one thing, very amazing thing. Like 11-year-olds, they can get good, game journalists. They can get good. Still, I find it so baffling that we are having the discussion about inclusivity in video games. How can we have the discussion of inclusivity when 11 and 12-year-olds can get into Dark Souls just fine? Well, the answer is simple. Video games have never been 100% inclusive. It is only inclusive and accepting towards those who are interested to play them. Recently, people are demanding video games to be more inclusive towards women, for example. How? By adding more and more female characters in video games. Not a bad idea, except they also criticize female characters that are sexy. What? I thought women strive to be sexy, beautiful, and appealing, but apparently we need to have female characters that are just average so that they are relatable and that they can avert the male gaze? Come on, they're asking for inclusivity by saying, screw you, man, you can't have your sexy women. That's not very inclusive, isn't it? We also need to make games more inclusive by adding non-white characters in video games, which is also a not request because as someone who is not white, I can get into video games just fine. Sure, 90% of the video games that I play consist of white people, and I really don't care. Most games are made in the West anyway, and most of the people in the West are white. So other countries need to get good in their game devs, I guess. But no, apparently people need to make more games for non-whites or what they call people of color. And they do that by saying, screw these white characters in games. I'm starting to get sick of these exclusionists. You know, for someone who is striving for inclusivity, you're pretty damn hostile. I thought inclusivity is for everyone, but apparently screw the gamers who are straight, white, or men. And if you think that these inclusivity for women, people of color, or LGBT in video games aren't ridiculous enough, just recently we have a new form of demands of inclusivity. And that is the demand that video games should be easier so that people who are not familiar with video games can just get into video games. And by people who are not familiar with video games, we mean people who just don't want to play video games at all. Like I said, they're watering down a perfectly made juice so that it tastes like garbage. Remember this clip from AVGN's Star Wars review?
And that's why I invented the beat a game button. Yeah, all you do, if you're playing a really hard game, you just push the button and the game's beat. Let's try it out.
Well, this is an article from Rock Paper Shotgun demanding a skip boss fight button. No, I'm not kidding. I tackled this article in my last video. Go check it out if you want to know how ridiculously stupid that is. The more and more I get through the day, the more and more I also find articles after articles after articles about how games like Cuphead is apparently not accessible and that the difficulty is infuriating. Let's take one example. I find Cuphead's difficulty infuriating, not fun. Again, Cuphead is not a difficult game. I'm saying this as someone who sucks at video games and I died in the game like 600 plus times. But it's actually not that difficult once you manage to figure it out. You just need really good reflexes, a lot of patience, you need to be able to figure out the enemy's attack patterns, exploit their weaknesses, find the right moments in which you're able to attack, and once you figure those things out, the game becomes very easy. So the article gives in a couple of points. The first one being the controls that apparently doesn't make sense, in which I would like to ask you, how far have you been playing the game? The default controls really don't take too long to get used to. The right analog stick is unused and, in my opinion, it is for the best. It is already frustrating running and jumping through so many of the game's obstacles. I don't know why you complain about this game when the game that you mentioned, Contra and Mega Man, also have these issues. That begs the question whether or not you've played those games before. The next criticism is the parry, which, fair enough, I ended up almost not parrying at all throughout the game as well. The next one is enemy hitboxes, and that is also fair, but I personally don't really find that too much of an issue. It's more of a nitpick than an actual complaint. But the biggest criticism is that the game is lots and lots of trial and error. And yes, I agree, that's why I love this game. It feels satisfying when you finally figure out the enemy's weaknesses, their attack patterns, exploiting them, and beating the living hell out of them. And yes, I love learning through repetition of Cuphead and memorizing the enemy's attack patterns and adapting through it. If it's not for you, that is also fine. However, I find it rather confusing that you criticize the game for being trial and error when in the next paragraph you praise Mega Man and Contra. I wouldn't be able to make it out the first level of Contra if I didn't die in it like hundreds of times. Those games are also about trial and error. How is this any different? The article left me rather confused. It has some legitimate points, but there are some glaring inconsistencies within it that are not explained very well. Like, how is Cuphead a trial and error game not for your taste when Contra and Mega Man are also about trial and error? But hey, I gotta give credit for this article. A handful of legitimate points is better than one. And one is better than none. And none is better than a fish skeleton down the cockhole. So I think this article is several degrees better than a fish skeleton down the cockhole. What do you mean that joke sounds familiar? Anyway, I got rather briefly off topic for a second there. We're gonna go back into talking about video games and how video games are not inclusive. If you want to criticize Cuphead, I would rather have this article having a handful of legitimate points talking about the gameplay rather than...
When is exclusion a valid design choice? The difference between what you earn and what you are owed.
I want to ask to these game journalists, why do you have to make games to be more inclusive? Now, we all know that the answer is because you work as a game journalist and the work is too challenging for you, so you want to make it easier, but I want to give you the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you have good intentions. Maybe you want to make games for everybody so that they sell better, because if everyone can play them, then the game will sell for everyone, right? Well, here's the thing. Despite it being a game that you call incredibly challenging and difficult, Dark Souls is a pretty damn successful game that spawns 2 sequels, a 2D version, a spiritual successor, and a couple of ripoffs. Cuphead is also among Steam's top sellers right now. Assassin's Creed is among one of the most popular game series of all time. Despite it being so filthy casual, even 9-year-olds can play them. It's almost like a game's overall difficulty has little to no bearing on the sales. You just need to make a game that is good at what it does. And if you think that what it does is way too hard, then I'm sorry, you're gonna have to deal with it.
Cuphead is a very challenging game, in ways one can argue are both good and bad. But let's put that aside for a moment and ask another serious question that is at heart of the rather nasty conversation that has sprouted up again due to the game's difficulty. Are you owed the act of finishing a game because you bought it?
No. You have to earn it. And if the game beats your ass, then I'm sorry, but that's just how the games work. You can cheat through the system, but cheating is a personal choice. I cheat through a lot of games, but I would never ever demand game developers for cheats to be like the norm. If they wanted to make it the norm, that's fine. If they don't, that's also fine. This is my issue with all of these people demanding inclusivity. They bring up inclusion by demonizing the sections that they perceive to be the majority and the sections that they perceive to be causing the exclusion. Sorry, but inclusion also includes the majority as well. And knowing that Cuphead is one of the top selling games on Steam, your demands of making the game easier just so that everyone can play them is not going to be received well by everyone who already played it.
Video games are one of the only means of expression where you have to pass some sort of a test before seeing the rest of what the experiences has to offer. No one asks you to solve a logic problem before reading the last page of a book, nor are there many art galleries that ask you to quiz about the paintings that you saw in the last room before you can get to the next one. But a game asks you to get good enough at whatever challenges it offers before you can see the whole thing. You will be tested, and only those who have earned the higher levels through completing those tests will ever see them.
Because video games are not movies. Nor are they art galleries. That's a horrendous comparison, and I have the feeling that that's what you want them to be. That kind of explains why gamers are pretty hostile towards you.
Which is why so many hardcore gamers are aghast at the idea of games like Cuphead offering an easy mode or an option to skip the boss fights. The art is beautiful enough that seeing the next level is its own reward for mastering the game's punishing bosses, or at least that's the idea. If you're not good enough to finish that level, you are not deserving to see the next one. There should be no shortcuts.
Yes! The game devs are actually kind enough to provide you a simple mode. Go play the game through that mode if you think that it's too challenging for you. Oh sure, we will mock you for it, but you can play them.
And that's the problem here, isn't it? The difficulty will turn some people off, and those people will never ever get to see the art. They will never enjoy those animation. The design of the game itself keeps them out, when the addition of an easy mode or an option to skip the bosses would allow everyone to see as much or as little as they want.
Yes! You don't like it, it's not for you then. Leave! Also, you destroyed your entire argument by linking a video of someone beating the bosses with A+ ratings. So if you want to enjoy Cuphead's animations but you find the game to be challenging, why not watch someone else play the game? Wouldn't that be a good idea?
There's also the issue that with games this difficult, with no option to turn down that difficulty or skip boss fights, can completely dismiss players without full motor control or one or both hands.
Wait. Did you just use disabled people as a way to justify that games should be inclusive? Last time I checked, you still have both of your hands. Last time I checked, you are not disabled, or at least physically disabled. Use those hands. You legit disgust me right now. You're putting yourself on the same level as disabled people so that you can justify having easier difficulty? No. You are not disabled. You are not uneducated. You still have both of your hands. Grab the controller and play them. Jesus Christ, I can't believe I am saying these things to freaking game journalists in 2017. What is next? Asking movie reviewers to watch the goddamn movie?
If players decide to value personal accomplishment in a game, and they do, why not let them also decide how they want to engage that game if it's technically possible? You can skip right to the end of any episode of Game of Thrones if you're watching on HBO's app, and no one will stop.
Okay. Let's stop right there. That may be true to individuals, because they do not have the duty to play video games, nor do they have the duty to watch Game of Thrones. You have that duty. You have the duty to review video games. You have the duty to play them and tell people what the qualities and flaws of those games are. If you're asking for easier difficulties, that means you are telling people that you don't want to do your job. Yes, everyone can choose to play however they like. I play games with cheats all the freaking time. Single player games before you storm in the comments, but you are different. You are a game journalist. We expect you to not only play the game, but also beat it. Should you be really damn good? No. But I expect you to at least be competent enough to beat the game, or at least follow the Yahtzee's methods of be honest when you couldn't even be bothered beating the game.
Are you owed the final scene of a game if you buy it, regardless of your physical ability or mastery of what the game is trying to teach you? Can exclusion be a valid artistic goal?
Hey, I couldn't be bothered doing a perfect S run in all of the Cuphead bosses, which I did a couple of bosses, but I'm gonna leave the all S in all bosses to the pros. My skills can only go so far. Go and mock me for it, but at least I beat the game. If you don't want to have that insane amount of skills, fine, but at least have the competence to beat the game, okay? It took me 21 hours. I'm sure you adults can do so much less than that. And yes, exclusion is a valid artistic goal because, as shown in the pyramid, certain games are only accessible to certain types of people. If you don't like the games fall into the middle or the top tier, there's always games in the bottom tier. And if you only enjoy those sorts of games, that is fine. You're not obligated to play every video game ever. However, you game journalists, you are in a different position. This is your job. If you hate your job, give it to people who wants it. I have no doubts that there are tons of passionate gamers out there who wants to play video games as their job. So why not give your jobs to them? Oh, and by the way, some of these people are minorities. Women, people of color, LGBT. So give it to them right now. Also, since we're discussing about inclusivity of video games in terms of its difficulty, can you please explain to me how difficult games like Cuphead and Dark Souls are selling incredibly well and lots of people play them? If you say that the difficulty of those games are exclusionary by nature, then why are more and more people buying those games? So to conclude, the problem isn't with the game. It isn't with the gamers. The problem is simply you. You for being terrible at games. You for refusing to do your duty as a game journalist because you clearly hate your job. You clearly hate your audiences. And you clearly hate video games. So game journalists, you should all be asking yourself one simple question.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer? Every night, I can feel my leg, and my arm, even my fingers.
Before we end this video, huge thanks to Angela Umbrella for the pledge on Patreon. You are fantastic. That's all for the video today. If you like this, you can go ahead, click the like button, and subscribe for more. If you wish, you can support me on Patreon. And thanks for watching.